Zara, the princess of the Vrelian Empire, stepped onto Earth for the first time. The warm sun, the blue sky, and the bustling humans below were all new to her. She was used to the cold metal cities of her empire, where every moment was structured and planned. Earth, with its chaos and life, felt different, alive in a way her world never was. Her mission here was simple: to form an alliance with the humans. Yet, something about the situation made her uneasy. She stood tall in her elegant armor, a sleek design of silver and blue that symbolized her royal status. Her long dark hair flowed behind her, and her eyes, a deep violet, scanned the crowd. Below, the humans appeared small and fragile, their world fragile compared to her own. But Zara knew the true power of Earth was hidden within its people. She had read the reports, heard the stories. Humans were tough, determined, fierce. She took a deep breath and tried to calm her thoughts. The pressure on her shoulders felt heavy. The Vrelian Empire was in a fragile state, teetering on the edge of war with many surrounding galaxies. Her mission was critical. If she could secure an alliance with Earth, it might just be the key to preventing that war. But even as she stood on the landing platform, she couldn't shake the anxiety that gripped her heart. A man stepped forward, breaking through the crowd. His posture was strong, his movements purposeful. Zara felt her pulse quicken as he approached. This was Commander Michael Kane, the leader of Earth's defense forces, and the man she had been sent to meet. His eyes were dark, and his expression was serious. He was everything Zara had imagined, and yet nothing like she expected. "You're late," he said, his voice rough but steady. There was no trace of fear or awe in his tone, only a sharp focus on the task at hand. Zara blinked. "I beg your pardon?" she asked, her voice measured. He met her gaze with a level of intensity that was almost too much to bear. "You're a princess, and you're here to help us avoid war. Time is precious. So, let's get to work." Zara didn't expect such bluntness. She had been taught that royalty deserved respect, that words should be carefully chosen and actions deliberate. But Kane's directness struck a chord with her. It was clear that this man didn't care about titles. He cared about results. The princess quickly realized that the world she had stepped into was unlike any other. It wasn't a world of endless power plays or political speeches. It was a world of action, where words meant little compared to the strength of one's character. "Very well," Zara said, adjusting her stance. She let go of her royal airs, focusing instead on the task ahead. "I understand the gravity of this situation. Let's proceed." Kane studied her for a moment, as if sizing her up. "You look ready, but I've been fighting these aliens for years. You've read the reports, right?" Zara nodded. "I have. I know what the threat is." "Then we'll see how well you handle it. We don't have time to waste, Princess. Two of them walked side by side as they made their way toward the command center. Zara was acutely aware of every step she took. The human soldiers all around her observed her closely. Their eyes didn't shimmer with wonder. Instead, they were focused and calculating. The princess felt like an outsider in their world, but she was determined to change that. Inside the command center, the walls were lined with screens and devices she didn't understand. Humans were so resourceful. Everything about their technology felt more practical than the high-tech luxury of her home. They didn't have the same grand, polished designs that her empire valued. They built their tools for efficiency, for use, not for beauty. "Welcome to Earth's heart," Kane said, gesturing toward the screens. "This is where we keep an eye on everything. From here, we'll coordinate our efforts to face this alien threat." Zara observed the room. She could see the tension in the faces of the humans around her, their eyes darting from one screen to another. This was not the calm, controlled environment of her empire. This was raw, real, and filled with urgency. She understood the feeling. Her own people, though powerful, faced constant challenges. But here, Zara could sense something else, something she hadn't fully understood until now. The humans were not afraid. Despite the overwhelming danger, there was something calm in their determination. Commander Kane turned to her. "We're not here to coddle you, Princess. If you want to earn our trust, you'll have to prove yourself. This mission isn't about diplomacy or fancy talks. It's about surviving. It's about making sure we still have a home after the dust settles." Zara met his gaze without flinching. She had faced harder trials. She was no stranger to pressure. "I will prove myself," she said with quiet confidence. Kane nodded. "Good. Now, let's see if you can keep up." The princess followed him through the hallways, her mind racing. She had prepared for this moment for years, but the weight of reality was heavier than she expected. What did it truly mean to protect a world, to defend it against an enemy like the one threatening them? She had never fought for survival in the way Kane had. Her life had been one of comfort, of certainty. But now, as she walked beside him, she realized that the true test wouldn't be the political talks or the royal gestures. It would be whether or not she could stand with humanity in their greatest trial. As they entered a war room, the doors slid shut behind them, and the hum of the command center intensified. A series of holographic maps flashed before Zara's eyes, showing troop movements, alien ship coordinates, and strategic points. The human soldiers around her began to discuss the coming assault. Kane leaned in toward the map, pointing out key locations. "We need your fleet ready. But it's not just about ships. It's about ground troops. We need to coordinate, work together." Zara studied the map. "I understand. I'm glad to hear that. Now let's see how well you handle a real mission." Zara stood next to Commander Kane, her eyes scanning the screen in front of her. The war room hummed with activity as soldiers worked diligently to monitor every movement of the alien invaders. A map of Earth's major cities blinked in and out of focus, with red dots marking the enemy's positions. Zara's mind raced as she tried to process everything. She had always relied on her people's strength, their advanced technology, and their battle-hardened warriors. But here, in this human command center, things were different. The urgency, the focus. It was clear that the humans didn't have the luxury of relying on superior technology. They fought with what they had, and that was often enough. Kane was speaking to a soldier when Zara stepped forward. "Tell me what I need to do," she said, her voice calm yet filled with determination. The princess knew that if she were to earn the trust of these humans, she would need to prove that she wasn't just a figurehead from another world, but a warrior in her own right. Kane looked over his shoulder, eyeing her for a moment, before turning back to the soldier. "We're preparing for an assault on the alien stronghold. It's one of their biggest bases on Earth. We don't have a lot of time, and we don't have a lot of options." Zara's heart beat a little faster. This was no longer just diplomacy. This was real. This was war. "I'm ready," she said, stepping forward once more. "I will fight alongside you." Kane met her gaze, his face unreadable. "You better be. The enemy doesn't care who you are. They only care about winning." Zara nodded. She had been trained for battle, though it was not in the way Kane might have imagined. Her training had always been about strategy, about leading troops from afar. But now she was here, standing with the humans, ready to fight with them, not just for them. This was her moment to show that she could be more than a princess. The soldiers began to move, and Zara followed Kane through the bustling command center. The air was thick with the weight of responsibility, but Zara could feel a new resolve building inside her. She might not have been raised as a soldier, but she was not afraid of the fight. As they made their way to the armory, Zara couldn't help but notice the difference between the human soldiers and the Vrelian warriors she had known all her life. The Vrelians were trained from birth, their strength enhanced by genetic modifications and advanced technology. They were fierce and nearly invincible in combat. But humans fought with something different. There was a fire in their eyes, a quiet intensity that Zara couldn't quite explain. These soldiers fought not just for survival, but for something deeper, a connection to their world, to each other. Inside the armory, Kane handed Zara a weapon. It was a human-made rifle, nothing like the energy-based weapons of her empire, but sturdy and effective. The weight of it felt foreign in her hands. She had used weapons before, of course, but not like this. The technology was simpler, more straightforward, and yet it felt powerful in its own right. "Don't think too much," Kane said as he grabbed his own weapon. "Just aim and fire. Focus on the target." Zara nodded. "I understand." As they moved out, the sounds of the command center faded away, replaced by the distant hum of the battlefield. The sun had set, and the night air was thick with tension. Kane's team had already set up their position outside the alien stronghold. Zara followed him, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This wasn't just a battle for Earth. It was a test of her own strength, a test that would decide her place in this world of humans. The team was already preparing for the assault. Zara could see them moving quickly, with the kind of precision that only comes from years of experience. They had a plan, and they executed it without hesitation. Kane stood at the front, speaking quietly with his second-in-command, giving orders in a tone that left no room for argument. Zara watched him carefully, noting how he seemed to command the respect of his team effortlessly. "Ready?" Kane asked. Turning to her, Zara's grip on her weapon tightened. "Ready." Without another word, the team advanced toward the enemy base. The ground was rough with jagged rocks and uneven terrain, but the soldiers moved with practiced ease. Zara felt the adrenaline begin to build within her. This wasn't like the controlled battles of her empire. This was chaotic, unpredictable, and raw. They reached the outer walls of the base, and Kane signaled for them to stop. Zara crouched beside him, her eyes scanning the area. The alien forces were massive, their technology advanced in ways that surpassed anything she had ever seen. But she wasn't afraid. "Not anymore." "Stay low," Kane ordered. "We're moving in." Zara nodded and followed Kane's lead as they silently advanced. They slipped past the outer defenses, moving with stealth and precision. Zara could feel her heart pounding in her chest, but her mind remained clear. Every step was calculated, every movement intentional. This was what it meant to fight for survival, to fight without the luxury of advanced weapons or overwhelming power. As they reached the inner perimeter of the base, a sudden explosion shook the ground beneath them. Zara stumbled, but Kane was already pulling her to her feet, his grip firm and steady. "Move!" he shouted. Without hesitation, Zara followed him, running toward the heart of the base. The battle had begun in full force, and there was no turning back now. They fought their way through alien soldiers, their weapons blazing, their tactics sharp. Zara found herself working alongside the humans in a way she had never imagined. She fired her weapon, taking down enemy after enemy with precision. Each shot reminded her that she wasn't just a princess. She was a warrior. For the first time, she truly felt what it was like to fight for something greater than herself. Every alien soldier that felt like a victory for not just Earth, but for her people as well. After what felt like hours, they reached the central command of the base. Kane and Zara exchanged a quick look before storming the entrance. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of smoke and destruction. The alien leader stood at the far end of the room, his alien eyes glowing with fury. "This ends now," Zara said, her voice steady. Kane nodded. "Let's finish it." The battle had been long and intense. The air was thick with the smell of smoke, and the ground beneath Zara's boots trembled with the aftermath of explosions. The alien stronghold, once an imposing fortress, now lay in ruins. Zara stood at the edge of the wreckage, her weapon still in hand but her mind far away. She glanced at Kane, who was talking to his team, giving out orders, his face calm but weary. There was something about the way he moved, the way he led his people, that caught her attention. Kane wasn't just a soldier. He was a protector, a leader in every sense of the word. As Zara watched him, she couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration. The battle had ended in victory, but it had come at a high cost. Several soldiers had fallen, and the wreckage of the alien forces was a stark reminder of how close they had come to defeat. Zara's hands trembled slightly as she lowered her weapon, the weight of the fight still settling in her chest. This was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Back in her empire, battles were fought with precision and power, but there was something raw and personal about this fight. These humans fought for their survival, for their families, for their home. It was a fight that went beyond strategy. It was a fight for everything they held dear. Kane noticed her standing off to the side, her face unreadable. He approached her slowly, his eyes scanning the surroundings before locking onto hers. "You did well," he said, his voice low but sincere. Zara nodded, but the words felt heavy in her mouth. She had done well, yes, but she knew that it wasn't enough. She wasn't just a warrior in this fight. She had to be something more. Her people needed her to be a symbol of strength, not just someone who followed orders. She needed to be the leader her empire could rely on. "I still don't understand," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you fight like this? For Earth? For your people?" Kane raised an eyebrow, his expression softening. "That's not something you can understand in a day, Princess. It's not just about Earth. It's about all of us. We fight for the people we love, the places we call home. We fight for our future. That's what gives us the strength to keep going, even when everything seems lost." Zara stood silently, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always believed that power, strength, and leadership were about control, about having the upper hand, the advantage. But Kane's words made her question everything. Was that what her empire lacked? The connection to its people, to the hearts of those it was supposed to protect? "You're not like anyone I've met before," she said quietly, almost to herself. She didn't know why she said it. Maybe it was because of the way Kane fought or the way he treated his people. Or maybe it was the way he made her feel. He wasn't just a warrior. He was something deeper, something more complex. Kane turned to face her fully, his eyes searching hers. "And you're not what I expected either. I thought you'd be like the rest of your people, cold, distant, and focused only on power. But you're not. You're here, standing with us, fighting alongside us. And that's something worth respecting." Zara felt a strange warmth spread through her chest at his words. It was the first time someone had spoken to her like that. Not as a princess, not as royalty, but as a person, as a partner in this fight. "You've been fighting a lot longer than I have," Zara said, her voice steady. "You've seen more than I ever will. And yet, you still stand here. What keeps you?"
"Going?"
Kane's expression softened, and he took a step closer. "You learn to fight, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to survive. We protect what matters, the people we love, the places we call home, and we don't stop fighting, no matter how hard it gets." Zara nodded slowly, understanding the truth of his words in a way she hadn't before. She had always believed that power came from superiority, from being the strongest, the most feared. But now, standing here with Kane, she saw something different. The strength that he and his people had wasn't about power or technology. It was about heart. It was about love and loyalty, about standing together no matter what. The soldiers around them began to gather, their voices low as they discussed the aftermath of the battle. Kane turned to face them, his leadership unquestioned. He gave out quick orders, ensuring that the wounded were tended to and that the base was secured. Zara watched him, still processing everything she had learned in the past hours. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice quiet. Kane glanced at her, his eyes thoughtful. "Now, we rebuild. We take what we've learned, and we keep moving forward. There's still work to do. The war isn't over." Zara nodded, a sense of purpose rising within her. The battle had been won, but it was only one step in a much larger war. And she wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was a part of this fight for Earth and for her people. She could no longer afford to stand apart, to remain the distant princess she had once been. She walked up beside Kane, her posture strong and steady. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Zara felt ready to face it. Not just as a princess, but as a leader. Kane noticed her change in demeanor, and he gave her a small, approving nod. "You're not the same person you were when you got here, Zara. And that's a good thing." Zara met his gaze and smiled, a true smile, one that spoke of a new understanding, of new possibilities. "Neither are you, Kane." As the human soldiers began to disperse, Zara and Kane remained standing side by side, the weight of the battle still hanging in the air, but also a new sense of hope. This wasn't just about fighting an enemy. It was about creating something new, something better. And as they looked toward the future, both knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The days following the battle were filled with tension. The alien forces had been driven back, but their retreat wasn't a victory. It was only the beginning. Zara, now more determined than ever, had thrown herself into the strategy meetings, offering her knowledge of the Vrelian Empire's military tactics. Her mind was sharp, but she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at her. The more she learned about Earth and the humans' resilience, the more she realized how much she had underestimated them. Kane's trust in her had grown, and though their bond had deepened during the battle, it was still unspoken, fragile. She could sense the respect between them, but she also felt the weight of the duty on his shoulders. Kane wasn't just fighting to protect his world, he was fighting for everything he believed in. And Zara knew, in the pit of her stomach, that this fight wasn't over. There was more to this than a simple battle. It was about power, control, and the fate of the galaxy. Zara felt torn between her loyalty to her people and her growing connection to Kane and Earth. One evening, as the sun set over the distant mountains, Kane called her to his quarters. Zara had grown used to the late-night discussions. They had become a routine, talking strategy, going over the enemy's movements, planning their next steps. But this time, as she entered his quarters, she could sense something was different. The atmosphere felt heavy, the air thick with something unsaid. Kane stood by the window, his back to her. The dim light of the setting sun cast long shadows across the room, and his face seemed even more distant than usual. "Is something wrong?" Zara asked, stepping closer. Kane turned slowly, his eyes dark with something she couldn't quite read. "I've just received a message from the Vrelian Empire," he said, his voice low. "It's about you." Zara froze, her breath catching in her throat. She had known this day might come, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. "What did they say?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They want you back," Kane replied, his eyes hardening. "They've threatened to turn against Earth if you don't return to your people. Your loyalty to them is being questioned." Zara's heart skipped a beat. Her people had always come first, always. She had been raised to believe that the Empire's survival was her responsibility, that she would do whatever it took to protect it. But now, standing here with Kane, she felt a shift inside her. She no longer saw her duty to her people as the only path forward. She had come to care for this world, for the humans who had welcomed her, for the fight they shared together. "This isn't right," Zara muttered, looking down at her hands. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be their pawn in this game of power." Kane stepped forward, his expression softening. "Zara, you've done more for us than anyone could have imagined, but you need to decide where your loyalty lies. I can't make that decision for you." Zara felt a pang in her chest. She had always believed that loyalty was black and white. She was either with her people or against them. But now, with Kane standing before her, with Earth and the humans, showing her a kind of strength she had never known, the lines were becoming blurred. She stepped back, her mind racing. The pressure of the Vrelian Empire, the threat of rebellion against her family, it was all coming at her like a storm. But what about the storm inside her? The one that told her that this war, this fight for survival, wasn't just about politics or royal duties. It was about the future of everything. Humanity, the Vrelians, and every other species that might be caught in the crossfire. "I don't know what to do," Zara said, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to choose." "You don't have to choose right now," Kane said quietly. "But when the time comes, you'll know. What I'm asking you is to think about what really matters. Who are you fighting for? Your people? Your empire or something bigger?" Zara looked up at him, searching his face for answers. There was nothing but honesty in his eyes. He wasn't trying to manipulate her to make her feel guilty. He was simply asking her to look at the bigger picture. I need time," Zara said, her voice hoarse. "I need time to think." Kane nodded, understanding. "Take all the time you need. Just know that whatever you choose, we'll stand by you. But don't let your past choices define you. You're more than just a princess. You're a warrior, a leader." Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest. Kane's words weren't just comforting, they were empowering. For the first time, she felt like she could make a difference, like she could choose her own path, without the weight of her title pushing her in one direction. That night, Zara wandered the compound, her mind filled with conflicting thoughts. The stars shone above her, distant and cold, like the future itself. She had always believed that loyalty to her empire was the highest calling, but now she wasn't so sure. Could she betray her people? Could she leave them to their fate in order to stand with Earth and Kane? She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for sure. Whatever decision she made, it would change everything. The next day, the news from her empire arrived. The Vrelian officer who had delivered the message was waiting for her in the command center. His face was cold, his eyes sharp with authority. "You've had enough time, princess," he said, his voice filled with disdain. "The Empire demands your return. There is no room for negotiation." Zara stood tall, her mind made up. She had heard what she needed to hear. It wasn't just about her duty anymore. It was about her future. She was no longer the princess sent to Earth to secure an alliance. She was Zara, a warrior who had seen the strength and courage of the humans, and she would stand with them. "I won't be returning," Zara said firmly, her voice steady and resolute. "The Vrelian Empire has its own path to follow, but I'm choosing my own." The officer's eyes narrowed. "You are making a grave mistake, princess. You may have been a leader once, but you will be nothing without the Empire's support." Zara's gaze never wavered. "I'll make my own future. The humans here have shown me that. I won't turn my back on them." As she turned away from the officer, Zara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was a choice that would haunt her for the rest of her life, but it was hers to make. and for the first time, Zara felt truly free. Zara stood on the edge of the cliff, looking out over the vast expanse of Earth's landscape. The horizon stretched endlessly before her, a sea of greens and blues, a world so different from her own. It was a beautiful world, full of life and hope. But Zara couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too fragile, too vulnerable. She had made her choice, and now there was no turning back. The Vrelian Empire had abandoned her, and with them, the life she had known. But in its place, she had found something new. She had found Earth, and in it, the strength of the people she had once underestimated. She had found Cain, whose quiet leadership had shown her that there was more to life than power and control. But the fight was far from over. The alien forces that threatened both Earth and the galaxy had only grown stronger, and Zara knew that her decision to stay would have consequences. The world around her was changing, and Zara was changing with it. She had once been a princess, sheltered by the power of her empire, but now she was a warrior, a leader. The weight of the choices she had made pressed down on her, but she didn't regret them. She couldn't, not after everything she had seen and learned. Cain approached her from behind, his footsteps steady and sure. He didn't need to say anything. Zara could feel his presence beside her. He had become more than just a partner in battle. He had become her anchor in the storm. "You've been standing here for a while," Cain said, his voice calm. "Are you all right?" Zara nodded, but her gaze never left the horizon. "I'm thinking about the future, about what's coming next." Cain didn't ask her to explain. He understood. "We'll face it together," he said simply. Zara turned to look at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I'm not sure I deserve your trust," she admitted. "I made a choice that goes against everything I've ever known." "You made a choice for yourself," Cain replied, his expression softening. "And that's what matters. You're not the only one who's had to make difficult decisions. We all have our reasons for fighting. And now, we fight for the future." Zara studied him, her heart swelling with the weight of his words. She had never thought of herself as a fighter, not like Cain, who had spent his life on the front lines. But she was beginning to understand that the battle was not just about weapons or technology. It was about something deeper. It was about the will to protect, to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. "We don't know what's coming next," Zara said, her voice low. "The alien forces are regrouping. We don't know how strong they are or what they'll do next." Cain nodded, his eyes hardening. "But we know one thing. They won't stop, not unless we stop them." Zara stood tall, the weight of her decision settling into her bones. She had chosen to stay, and now it was time to prove that she could make a difference. The world was at war, and there was no room for hesitation. She had seen what humanity was capable of, and she believed in them, believed in their strength, their resilience. She wasn't just here to fight alongside them. She was here to help lead them, to show them that there was more to this war than just surviving. "We'll need to act fast," Zara said, her voice firm. "We can't wait for the enemy to make the first move. We need to strike before they can regroup and gain any more power." Cain raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You're right. But we can't do this alone. We'll need the full support of the people, not just the soldiers." Zara nodded. "I'll speak to the leaders. I'll convince them that this is the only way forward." Cain looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Finally, he spoke. "I know you're still adjusting to all of this, but you're not alone in this fight. You've earned our trust, Zara. We'll follow you, just like you followed us." Zara felt a swell of emotion at his words. She had come to Earth expecting to be a stranger, someone who had nothing to offer. But in these past few days, she had found a purpose, a new reason to fight. The people here, the humans, had shown her what it meant to fight for something bigger than oneself. Thank you, she said quietly. I won't let you down. Kane gave her a brief nod before turning back toward the command center. Let's get to work then. We have a plan to put into action. The following hours were filled with preparation and planning. Zara worked closely with Kane and the human leaders to formulate a strategy that would take the fight to the heart of the alien forces. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. The aliens were organizing, and if they didn't act now, they might lose the advantage. The team gathered in the war room where maps of enemy territory covered the walls. Zara studied the maps, tracing the lines of defense the aliens had put in place. It was a massive operation, and they would need every resource they could get. Kane turned to Zara, his face serious. We're going to need all the support we can get from the humans here. They need to be ready for anything. This isn't just about us fighting. They need to know they're part of this. Zara nodded. I'll speak to them. I'll make sure they understand what's at stake. She spent the next few hours speaking with the leaders of the human resistance, explaining the plan and urging them to rally their people. It was a difficult task, convincing a world on the brink of war to trust her, someone they had only just met. But Zara knew what was at stake. She had seen the strength of humanity firsthand. If anyone could rally Earth's forces, it was her. By the time the sun had set, Zara had spoken to nearly every leader, every general, and every officer. She could see the determination in their eyes, the same fire that burned in her own chest. They were ready. They were united. That night, as Zara and Kane stood outside the command center looking up at the stars, Zara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The weight of her choices was still heavy, but for the first time she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. We're ready, she said quietly. Kane looked at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he smiled. We're ready. The day had finally arrived. Zara stood at the front of the command center, looking out over the gathering of humans and soldiers. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the horizon. There was something about the morning, light that made her feel hopeful, as if the world was ready to begin again. It had been days since she had made the decision to stay, to fight alongside these people, and now she knew without a doubt that it was the right choice. The war was far from over. The enemy was still out there, still threatening everything they had worked for. But Zara felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for the future, her future, the future of Earth, and the future of her people. This was no longer just a battle between two forces. It was a fight for something bigger, something worth protecting. Kane stood beside her, his gaze focused on the soldiers and the preparations unfolding before them. He had always been calm, but now there was a quiet intensity about him. Zara could see the weight of the battle ahead in his eyes, but there was something else there, too, a spark of determination, a belief in the mission, in the cause. He was no longer just a soldier, he was a leader, and so was she. Are they ready? Zara asked, her voice steady. Kane nodded, his eyes meeting hers. They're ready. They've all seen the same thing you have, Zara. They believe in this fight. Zara's heart swelled at his words. It was one thing to lead by strength and force, but it was something entirely different to lead with trust. Kane trusted her, and she had earned the trust of these people. It was a powerful feeling, one that made her feel both vulnerable and strong at the same time. As the team began to move out, Zara turned her attention back to the soldiers. They were lined up, their faces determined, their weapons ready. Earth's resistance had grown stronger, and with it, a sense of unity had formed. Humans, who had once been divided by differences, were now standing together, united in a common cause. And Zara, once a stranger on this world, was now one of them. She was no longer just a visitor from a distant empire. She was a part of Earth's fight for survival. Kane walked up beside her, his voice low. "This is it. We've got one chance to hit them hard, and we need to take it." Zara nodded. The plan was set. They would strike at the heart of the alien forces, aiming to cripple their command structure and break their hold on Earth. It was a risky move, but it was their best shot. If they succeeded, the aliens would be forced to retreat. If they failed, Zara didn't want to think about that. She couldn't afford to think about failure. "I'm ready," she said, her voice firm. Kane gave her a brief nod, and together they walked toward the front lines. The soldiers had already begun to move, their steps synchronized, their focus unwavering. Zara could feel the pulse of energy in the air as the battle drew near. This was what they had been preparing for, what they had fought for. But it was also something more, something deeply personal. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about proving to themselves and to each other that they could overcome anything. As they neared the alien base, the tension grew. Zara's heart pounded in her chest, but she remained focused. She had come a long way from the princess who had first arrived on Earth, unsure of herself and her place in this world. Now she was a warrior, standing alongside the humans who had shown her what it meant to fight for something greater than herself. The first shots were fired as they reached the outskirts of the base. Zara ducked behind cover, her weapon raised, her senses alert. The sound of gunfire filled the air, and the clash of battle echoed in the distance. The alien forces were not prepared for the full force of Earth's resistance. They had underestimated humanity's determination, and now they were paying the price. Zara moved with precision, her every step calculated, her movements fluid. The battlefield had become her second home, and she fought with a focus she hadn't known she was capable of. She fired her weapon, taking down alien soldiers with careful aim, her mind working in tandem with her body. She was no longer a stranger to this fight. She was part of it, every bit as much as the soldiers around her. The battle raged on, and slowly but surely, Earth's forces began to gain ground. The aliens were pushed back, their defenses crumbling under the weight of the human resistance. Zara's heart raced as she pushed forward, her eyes locked on the target ahead. She could see the command center in the distance, the heart of the alien forces. It was their final objective. If they could take it, they could end the war. Kane was by her side, his movements swift and precise. He had become more than just a partner in battle. He was her closest ally, her friend, and now, in this moment, he was the one person she trusted more than anyone else. They moved together seamlessly, as if they had been fighting side by side for years. They reached the command center, and Zara's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the final push. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was the moment that would decide everything, the fate of Earth, the fate of her people, and the fate of the galaxy itself. Together, Zara and Kane breached the entrance, fighting their way through alien soldiers with fierce determination. They reached the central control room, where the leader of the alien forces stood waiting. He was tall, his form shrouded in dark armor, his eyes cold and calculating. He was ready for them. But so were they. Zara and Kane charged forward, their weapons raised, their focus unshakable. The alien leader's eyes narrowed as they approached, but he wasn't prepared for the strength of their attack. Together, they fought with everything they had, and in the end, it was the combined strength of Earth and Zara's leadership that brought him down. The battle was won. As the dust settled, Zara looked around at the soldiers who had fought beside her. They were battered, exhausted, but victorious. The alien forces had been defeated, and Earth was safe. The war was over, and in that moment, Zara realized something. She had found her place. She was no longer just a princess of a distant empire. She was Zara, a warrior, a leader, and a part of something bigger than herself. Kane stood beside her, his face bruised, but his expression filled with pride. "We did it," he said quietly. Zara smiled, the weight of everything she had been through lifting from her shoulders. "We did," she agreed, and as the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its warm light over the battlefield, Zara knew that this was just the beginning. The future was uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same strength and courage that had brought her this far. And with Kane and the people of Earth by her side, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish. The dawn of a new era had begun.